Rise of the European Emperor by Taishan Laonyo.
Chapter 131 Danish Oysters. Marin was very happy after he had a big hand and signed the peace treaty. The weather was warm, so Marin took Schwartz, Kahn, Sauer, Kidd and other capable men, and a bunch of guards, and went to the beach outside Copenhagen to find a place to play football. However, unexpectedly, when he ran to the beach east of Copenhagen, Marin did not find a beach full of fine sand, but a beach full of oysters. What's going on? Why are there so many oysters? Marin was a little stunned. Before crossing, he had heard that Denmark had an oyster disaster, but those were Pacific oysters. But it's only 1503 now, and the local species are so arrogant. Moreover, Marin was surprised that oysters are not known as milk in the sea. Why are there so many but no one eats them? Kidd was not surprised. As an old sailor who has been in the industry for more than 30 years, Kidd understood the truth. So, he replied, maybe, the fishermen on Zealand Island were all conscripted as sailors, or kidnapped by the coalition fleet and connected to those ordinary merchant ships. So, no one has come to clean these oysters for a long time. What a waste of natural resources. This is milk of the sea. Marin sighed regretfully. Milk of the sea? What does it mean? Several men beside him were confused. No wonder, Europeans still don't know the nutritional value of milk, let alone oysters. Marin also reacted, and then he simply explained, it means rich in nutrition, and eating this can strengthen that aspect. Marin blinked, and everyone understood it in seconds. Then, several officers called their men back to find seasonings, and immediately began to pick up oysters on the beach and planned to eat them. Except for Schwartz, who was a little reserved and had not found a wife yet, all the others in the group had women. Especially Kahn, there are two more, which consumes a lot of physical strength and energy, and needs to be replenished. Marin also has a wife and sister-in-law to take care of. After the seasoning came, several people ate a lot. However, how big is the stomach of several people? Even if they eat crazily, they only eat a few dozen. Then, Marin asked the dozens of guards to help eat together. But it's still a drop in the bucket. Marin originally wanted to rely on everyone to eat oysters to clean up a football field. However, after eating for a long time, he failed to realize this wish. Moreover, according to Kidd's description, there are a lot of these things on the beaches and shallow waters of the East Frisian state. Similarly, there are a lot of these things on the coast of the Duchy of Schleswig. Marin was a little confused at first, but later he figured it out. Why? Because Europe was still in the serf era at this time. Serfs, as the main force of the population, were not allowed to leave the manor without permission. Therefore, most people, even if they want to eat oysters, have no possibility of going to the beach. As for the fishermen who live by the sea all year round, do they care about oysters? People have all kinds of delicious sea fish to eat, do they need to eat oysters every day? Moreover, oysters are only delicious when they are raw, but not as delicious as fish when they are cooked. They are not delicious when pickled or cooked. Perhaps, only those nobles and businessmen who are bored and come to the beach to play will often come to the beach to eat oysters. But there are so few such people, and ordinary people can't eat them. And the fishermen are not rare. Then, naturally there are more oysters. Usually, when there are too many oysters on the beach, the fishermen clean up the oysters like garbage, and most of them are thrown directly back into the sea. It can be said that in this era of sluggish population, the consumption of oysters is really a big problem. Because those who want to eat oysters may not be able to rush to the beach, and oysters cannot be safely transported to the mainland. No one eats stale oysters. Fishermen who often eat oysters are tired of eating them. Anyway, oysters are difficult to consume. Moreover, Europeans are still very conservative now, and no one goes to the beach to sunbathe naked body for no reason. Therefore, even if the beach is full of oysters, no one will clean them up. Because there is no such demand. But Marin felt distressed when he saw it. Milk in the sea. Highly nutritious. However, as a time traveler with infinite imagination, Marin quickly thought of a very good solution, that is, to set up an oyster sauce processing plant. Lee Kum Kee oyster sauce was very famous before Marin traveled through time. Many Cantonese dishes use oyster sauce as an important seasoning. In his previous life, Marin liked Cantonese cuisine very much, such as oyster sauce beef and oyster sauce chicken wings. Thinking about it makes Marin drool. According to a friend in Guangdong, Master Xing's braised chicken wings seem to be oyster sauce chicken wings, which are very enjoyable to eat. If you eat delicious oyster sauce chicken wings while singing braised chicken wings, I like to eat. It's very happy to think about it. However, compared to oyster sauce chicken wings, Marin actually prefers oyster sauce chicken legs. Because chicken legs feel better when you chew them. After all, chicken wings don't have much meat, and they will be gone after 2 or 3 bites. If you get a few big chicken legs and coat them with oyster sauce, they will look delicious and fragrant. Well, Marin wiped his saliva. Oyster sauce is a very strange thing. It turns out that Li Kum Ki's ancestor Li Kum Sheng was cooking oyster soup one day, and suddenly went out for something and forgot to extinguish the fire in the stove. When he came back, he found that the water was boiled dry, but a thick juice with a fragrant and delicious taste appeared at the bottom of the pot. In this way, Li Kum Sheng accidentally discovered a very important condiment for Cantonese cuisine, oyster sauce. Oyster sauce is not MSG, but it has a certain function of enhancing the flavor. Although it cannot replace MSG, it is also a very good condiment. In many Cantonese dishes, oyster sauce directly replaces the role of MSG. Of course, that was modern times. With the proliferation of MSG in chicken essence, oyster sauce, which is already relatively expensive, naturally has no competitiveness. But what era is it now? The early 16th century. MSG is not even a shadow. The whole world has no umami condiments. If you want umami, you can only eat seafood, cooked chicken soup, or eat Chinese specialty mushrooms. If it is not a specific dish, you can't get umami. But if Marin makes oyster sauce and promotes it to the whole of Europe as a seasoning for adding umami, it will definitely be promising. You know, now in the whole of Europe, except for his own court, other countries are still eating medieval dark cuisine, dipping bread and barbecue with pepper. The introduction of oyster sauce will surely become a clear spring and a bright existence in this food desert in Europe. In fact, it's funny to think about it. It's the 21st century, and Denmark is still stumped by a few oysters. It's not realistic to find a Chinese foodie. Because it's too far. My Chinese foodie will not spend more than 10,000 yuan to buy a plane ticket to eat just for a few oysters, right? It's not like there are no oysters in China. Spending 20,000 or 30,000 yuan on a plane ticket can make you eat oysters to death in your own country. Even if it is exported, it's not so cost-effective. Because the freight from Denmark to China is high, exporting oysters may not be profitable. Therefore, it would be better to find Li Kum Ki and set up an oyster sauce production factory locally. Shell thousands of oysters, throw them into a big pot and cook them. Then package the cooked oyster sauce. Ahem, who would they sell it to? Oh, there seem to be more Cantonese people among overseas Chinese, who are used to eating Cantonese food, so we can sell them in Chinese supermarkets in Europe. If they are produced locally in Europe, we can save the shipping cost from Guangdong to Europe, and we can have a little advantage in price. Then, the authorities can encourage Chinese people to set up grills on the streets of Denmark, turn over grilled chicken wings and chicken legs, apply oyster sauce, and use electric fans to blow the aroma directly to the streets to attract Danes to consume. Then we can ask Stephen Chow to dance a section of braised chicken wings to liven up the atmosphere. Stephen Chow is worth a lot, so we can copy Stephen Chow. Well, it's a good idea. The Danish government should give me a big award. Well, the Nobel Prize for Imagination. Marin said with satisfaction. Unfortunately, it is 1503 now, Denmark in 2017. Even if I want to give myself a reward, I can't receive it. Maybe consider asking them to burn paper money for myself. Ugh. Chapter 132, The Soldier Steals His Wife. Because the basic goal had been achieved, Marin finally ordered the army to pack up and prepare to withdraw. However, in order to prevent the Danish king Hans from turning against him as soon as the army left, Marin dismantled several large iron gates in Copenhagen and loaded them on ships. Originally, the Danes collected most of the iron materials in Copenhagen to make these large iron gates. Marin was better, and he directly unloaded their large iron gates and loaded them on ships and shipped them back. In this way, if King Hans dared to turn against him immediately, he would be killed back. Moreover, next time he came back, Copenhagen would not have a large iron gate to guard it. At that time, a few more naval guns could be mobilized ashore to blast open the city gate. Since losing Sweden, Denmark will also lose its iron production base. And spending money to import dozens of tons of iron materials from abroad, King Hans could not do it with the treasury that was now robbed. At least, Copenhagen will not be able to recover and afford the large iron gates in 1 or 2 years. When the army was about to withdraw, the people of Copenhagen were excited. However, the soldiers of Copenhagen were devastated. Because the armor and weapons on them, as small as an arrow, were all looted by the coalition forces. In other words, after the coalition forces withdrew, the defenders of Copenhagen would use wooden sticks to defend the city for a long time. Fortunately, Denmark still had tens of thousands of troops on the Swedish side, otherwise, any cat or dog could bully Denmark at this time. Prince Christian did not dare to lead his troops to withdraw to the occupied Copenhagen, but took the 10,000 troops to Oslo, Norway. After Prince Christian's 10,000 troops withdrew from Sweden and handed over the southern city of Sweden to Sweden, the four-party alliance felt that it was almost done and began to withdraw its troops gradually. However, in order to further scare the Danish king Hans, Marin drove away the captured Danish soldiers and young men and tore down the southwest wall of Copenhagen. Then, before leaving, Marin told Hans viciously that the purpose of tearing down the wall was to prevent him from being capricious. If Hans dared to break the agreement, the coalition forces could come back at any time, enter Copenhagen from the collapsed city wall, and capture him again. But next time, there would be no mercy. After withdrawing from Copenhagen, suddenly, a large number of soldiers surrounded Marin's carriage, scaring Marin into thinking that there was a mutiny. Colin and the loyal guards also tensed their nerves and were ready to fight at any time. But what Marin didn't expect was that the soldiers who surrounded Marin's carriage all knelt down in a large group. Marin was shocked, and then asked in confusion, "Warriors, what are you doing? If you have something to say, please stand up first." After seeing that these soldiers did not want to kill him, Marin was relieved. "Sir, we want. A leading officer named Mert blushed and wanted to speak, but didn't know how to say it. "Just say whatever you think. The soldiers under my command are never afraid of trouble." "Mert, stop hesitating and say it." Marin thought to himself, as long as you don't want to say, "We want your life," nothing else matters. After taking a deep breath, Mert said to Marin, "My Lord Earl." "Oh no, my Lord Duke. You know, most of the soldiers are still single. When you attacked Jever, you did reward 2,000 beauties, but there were not enough to go around. Now, brothers, see, there are so many beauties in Denmark. It's a pity that your military orders are as heavy as a mountain, so we dare not make any plans. But we really want to find a wife. Countless nights, we single soldiers have wet our underwear in our dreams." Ha ha ha, the surrounding soldiers burst into laughter. Mert's face flushed, but he continued to speak bravely. "I know that last time, you paid for Captain Art to go to Naples to buy us wives, but unfortunately, the French and Spanish jointly stopped it. I, Mert, and my brothers know that you are good to us. However, there are not many good opportunities like those in Italy. Moreover, it will cost you a lot of money. Most of my brothers are born as poor serfs, and they are not much nobler than dogs when they are born. It is you, sir, who gave us the opportunity to have enough food. You also paid us wages, and the money saved by Mert, a poor guy who was almost starving to death, can also subsidize my parents and younger brothers and sisters to prevent them from starving to death. But, sir, we really don't have the face to spend your money to buy wives anymore." Mert wiped his tears after he finished speaking, his eyes red. To be honest, in this era, the lives of serfs are really not much nobler than dogs, as Mert said. Even if you are single for a lifetime, it is not a big deal. Hearing Mert's heartfelt words, many soldiers' eyes were red, thinking of all the good things Marin had done for them, which was much better than when they were hungry and had no hope of getting married at home. Some sentimental soldiers even cried. However, Marin was confused and didn't understand what Mert meant. Because Mert said at the beginning that his pants were wet because of thinking about women. But then he said that they were too ashamed to ask him to spend money to buy them wives. "Mert, what do you want to say?" Marin asked curiously. "Your Excellency the Duke, we want. What on earth are you thinking about?" Marin was anxious. "We want you to show us mercy and allow us to find wives in Denmark." Mert said loudly and bravely, then lowered his head shyly. "Find wives in Denmark?" Marin was shocked and asked, "We are the invading army, how can the Danes marry their daughters to you?" "Sir, if you relax the discipline, we can find a way ourselves, and it can also save you money." Mert whispered. "You mean, to rob?" Marin finally understood. However, he quickly shook his head. "How can this be? Our army is a regular army, and we can't do such immoral things. Remember, you are not allowed to tease women, you are not allowed to rob women, no. No." Marin said angrily. "Sir, we are not going to rob women. If you don't rob women, do you want to rob men?" Marin was stunned. There are so many gays in our army. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt cold all over. "Oh. What we mean is to find those unmarried girls." Mert was also a little anxious. His master's thoughts were too dirty. Isn't that robbing? Sir, think about it, if we don't rob those Danish girls, will they get married in the future? Yes, that's right. Marin nodded. Who are they marrying? Danish men. They are all fighting for the Danish king and against you, sir. Why should they get it for free? It's better to get it for us. Mert said with a righteous face, as if he had done something heroic. You. Ha ha ha. Marin suddenly reacted and was also amused by Mert's divine logic. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was true, anyway, he had offended Denmark to death, so what if he allowed his subordinates to rob a few Danish girls? Anyway, these big-headed soldiers would take them back as wives, and they couldn't treat those girls badly. It's not like the devils who robbed women and then killed them. Although Mert's reasoning was a bit crooked, it was not without reason. Those Danish girls were going to marry Danish men anyway. And those Danish men could easily become soldiers of King Hans of Denmark and become soldiers of his enemy army. And the cubs born to them and those Danish girls might continue to fight for the Danish king in the future and oppose themselves. So, it would be better to give them to his own men. In the end, Marin agreed to Mert and others' request and announced that the soldiers without wives would form a separate team of 5 people and go to the Danish villages to select wives on the march. When Marin asked Mert and others why they didn't rob wives in Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark, Mert answered like this: girls in big cities look good, but they can't do farm work in the countryside, so they are useless. This reason is very good and powerful, and very rural. As if to confirm this point, when those bachelor soldiers robbed Danish girls, they first looked at their faces and figures, the second look was to see if they could give birth, the third look was to see if there were calluses on their hands. This third look is very important. In this era, there is no compulsory education. Girls from ordinary families do not go to school. Most of them have been working with their parents since childhood. Of course, there are also lazy girls who are spoiled by their parents and are not used to working in the fields. But there is a difference between girls who love to work and those who do not. Those girls who have been working in the fields since childhood will have calluses on their palms. And those lazy girls who think of themselves as princesses since childhood have white and tender palms. These honest and simple soldiers favor those girls with calluses on their palms the most. As for those girls without calluses on their hands, no one would care unless they were very beautiful. Moreover, those who were very beautiful but without calluses on their hands were mostly snatched by officers, and the soldiers were generally not interested. Moreover, after these big-headed soldiers snatched the girls they liked, they would take the girls to the quartermaster to ask for help in registration, and put their black cross white vests on the girls they liked, and ask the quartermaster to write their names on the white vests to avoid mistakes. On the way to the Duchy of Schleswig, Marin watched these impatient men perform how to snatch the Danish flower girl. However, Marin was a man who knew how to measure and would not snatch other people's daughters for nothing. Whenever a soldier snatched a girl from a certain family, Marin would give a gold coin as a gift. Although it was not much, it was better than nothing. Moreover, Marin would send someone to register the address and surname of the family, as well as the military number of the robbing soldier. In case the wives of those soldiers miss home one day and it is inconvenient to visit relatives. After all, civilians of this era were basically illiterate. Marin even asked the translator to promise the families of Danish farmers whose daughters were kidnapped that if life became difficult in the future, the whole family could secretly run away to the Duchy of Schleswig to live. As long as they could prove that your daughter married my soldier. For this reason, Marin also specially wrote a receipt to each family. In the future, if these families want to immigrate to Schleswig, they will be properly resettled with this receipt. This promise is much more practical than that gold coin. Chapter 133 Land Redemption and Trusteeship Policy, Part 1. When marching on land, only Marin's 18,000 troops were left. After landing, they joined the 1,000 lancers left on the ground. As for the armies of Lübeck and Hamburg, they had been transported away by their ships. During the evacuation, Marin asked the naval sailors to take the 150 cogs they had been assigned back to East Frisia by sea, along with the last batch of property. Marin himself, with his army and food, went first to Kalundborg, a port in the northwest of Zealand, where he had landed in Vale. Along the way, the soldiers robbed a lot of Danish village girls. However, these village girls were organized into a separate team by Marin, and the monkeys were not allowed to touch them. According to Marin, after going back to hold a collective wedding, everyone will take the beauties home to do that. Because at that time, it was legal and in accordance with religious rules to do that to girls. So, now those monkeys should masturbate by themselves. After returning to Vale with the help of the fleet left by the navy, the soldiers continued to rob wives in the villages near Vale, and there was another uproar. In order not to affect the residents of the Duchy of Schleswig, Marin took the army to the northwest for a while, and did not go directly south. It was not until the soldiers had robbed enough women that Marin went south from the west coast of the Jutland Peninsula and headed towards the city of Ribe. At this time, the city of Ribe belonged to Marin and belonged to the northern border of the Duchy of Schleswig. The city was also stationed with Marin's original baggage troops. Marin returned with his army and was naturally warmly welcomed. After entering the Duchy of Schleswig, Marin divided several thousand troops and sent them to various parts of the Duchy of Schleswig, summoned all the nobles, big and small, to the city of Schleswig and convened a general meeting of all nobles to discuss major issues. In fact, this major issue is whether those nobles are willing to serve for themselves. At present, Marin divides the nobles of the Duchy of Schleswig into three categories. The first category is those who resist to death with themselves, such as those nobles in Abenro. The second category is those who surrender after defeat, and there are many such people, much more than the first category. The third category is those who surrender voluntarily. Marin was very impolite to the first category of nobles. After the noble died in the war, Marin's opinion was that his manor and property should be confiscated, and his family members should be fined as serfs. I was going to attack Zealand before, but I didn't have time to do it, and now it's just right. As for the second category of nobles, Marin gave them the right to choose either leave the Duchy of Schleswig and sell the territory to Marin at a discount. Of course, the price will not be too high, or stay and entrust the territory to Marin, who will pay them about the same income every year according to their current harvest. Then, those nobles will be left by Marin and concentrated in the noble community in the city. Marin will build luxurious entertainment venues for them to enjoy. The third type of nobles, those who surrendered voluntarily, are not good birds. However, Marin is now seriously short of manpower and can only win them over first. If there are talented people, they will retain their territory and enter the government to serve as public officials. Those who have no talent and bad reputation will be treated the same as the second type of nobles in the second way, entrusting their manors and sending them to the city to enjoy. Of course, if they are willing to give up their territory and go to Denmark, Marin will also pay to redeem their land and property. This attack on Denmark made Marin a fortune. No wonder some countries are keen on war. It turns out that winning the war is really a fortune. Apart from anything else, in Copenhagen, Marin obtained all kinds of property worth 1.3 million gold coins, and dug up Denmark's pirates for hundreds of years. Of course, because of the rush of time, many hidden treasures may not be found. However, with this money alone, Marin's investment has been recovered and he has made a lot of money. You know, throughout the war, although Marin dispatched a large army, the total investment did not reach 500,000 gold coins. As for the construction cost of the fleet, it was not built to attack Denmark, so it is not included in this cost. And this time Marin captured many Danish cities, and the total value of the looted property is estimated to be more than 2.5 million gold coins. It can be said that Marin made several times more in this war. Counting the land he was given, it is even more immeasurable. The land of the Duchy of Schleswig is relatively vast, but not fertile. Therefore, even if all the land of those nobles was redeemed, it would probably be a matter of hundreds of thousands of gold coins. There was a moment when Marin really wanted to redeem all the nobles' lands and then let them go. However, Marin finally endured it. Why? Because Marin was an ambitious man, he did not attack only one place, the Duchy of Schleswig. In the future, when he is fully grown, he will definitely continue to expand. If the affairs of the Duchy of Schleswig are not handled well, and all the local nobles are unlucky, Marin will attack other countries in the future and will be met with the strongest resistance from the local nobles. Because once Marin wins, their good days will be over. Therefore, although Marin is not happy, he must keep some obedient nobles, give them benefits, and show them to others. In this way, when he attacks another country next time, the nobles of that country will not resolutely resist his army. In addition, this time Marin intends to treat the nobles belonging to the Germans well, and intends to expel those Danish nobles. The Duchy of Schleswig is a mixed ethnic area. Most of the southern part is German and speaks German. About 1/3 of the northern area is Danish territory, and the people there all speak Danish. Marin's plan is to unite the German nobles, exclude the Danish nobles, and eventually turn the entire Duchy of Schleswig into German territory. Moreover, even if those Danish nobles are excluded, they still have a place to go. They can return to the Danish-controlled area of Jutland Peninsula and will still be accepted by the Danes. Because they are originally Danish. However, the German nobles in the Duchy of Schleswig are different. They are Germans. Once they leave the Duchy of Schleswig, it will be embarrassing. The original identity may not be recognized by other German countries. If you go to Denmark, as a German, you are likely to be excluded by the Danes. Therefore, weighing the pros and cons, most of these German nobles will definitely choose to stay. Moreover, when Marin marched, the determination of those German nobles to resist was not as strong as those Danish nobles. Marin decided to win over those German nobles who were willing to stay, and arrange public office for those who were capable. For those who are incapable, their land will be entrusted to them, so that their income will not be reduced, and entertainment venues will be built for them in the city for them to enjoy themselves. Originally, Marin was a little confused about how to arrange for the girls of the Grand Duchy of Moscow after the soldiers had snatched enough wives in Denmark. However, he suddenly remembered that those girls could be sent to the newly built sauna and bath city to rub the backs of the captive nobles. In addition, those serfs, as long as they are honest and hardworking, can also be rewarded with girls. In addition, Marin will definitely recruit more new mercenaries in the future, and those new bachelor soldiers can also be given girls. Chapter 134 Land Redemption and Trusteeship Policy, Part 2. Soon after, under the coercion of thousands of soldiers and horses sent by Marin, the nobles of the Duchy of Schleswig had no choice but to rush to Schleswig city to attend Marin's general nobles meeting. When Marin sent out those thousands of soldiers and horses, he allocated most of the draft horses, including the draft horses robbed by Denmark, to them. So everyone moved quickly. Even those nobles who were coerced to come to Schleswig city came on horseback. Therefore, in less than half a month, all the nobles of all sizes in the entire duchy gathered in Schleswig city. Marin, with the former Danish Prime Minister Mikkel, who had just surrendered to him, warmly entertained everyone and introduced Mikkel to the nobles of the Duchy of Schleswig. However, what made Marin frown was that Mikkel seemed to be more willing to deal with the Danish nobles in the north of the Duchy of Schleswig. Moreover, Mikkel's German was not very good. In this way, it would be easy for Mikkel to reuse the Danish nobles in the north after he became Prime Minister. Of course, there is no need to worry about this. Because Marin had already made plans to redeem the land of the Danish nobles and send them to Denmark. In this way, the future Duchy of Schleswig will have a situation where the Prime Minister is Danish, but the people below are all Germans. In this way, Marin is not worried that Mikkel, a lonely Dane, can cover the sky with one hand in the Duchy of Schleswig. After all, Marin will not be able to stay in the Duchy of Schleswig in the future, but will return to Aurich. In addition to handing over political affairs to Mikkel, Marin also plans to send a trusted general and station 10,000 troops here to guard against the Danish counterattack at any time. At the same time, monitor Michael's behavior. At the banquet, Marin took out barrels of fine wine. These fine wines were all collected by Marin from the wine cellar in the Copenhagen Palace. Originally, Marin planned to take them all back. After all, the collection of a powerful king must be good. However, it happened to be a noble meeting, so Marin simply took out a few large barrels to entertain those nobles. What surprised Marin was that the Duchy of Schleswig, which had a population of only 150,000, actually had 500 nobles of all sizes. On average, there was one noble for every 300 people. In fact, the number of nobles was far more than that. Because the 500 nobles who came today were actually representatives of various noble families, not all members. In other words, the total number of nobles in the Duchy of Schleswig may be as high as 2,000 or 3,000, which is a very large number. In addition, those nobles who were killed because of resistance have not been counted. Marin took a deep breath, raised the big-footed wine glass, and greeted everyone first. Then, he said loudly, "Welcome to this noble meeting. I, in the name of the new Duke of Schleswig, welcome everyone." After that, Marin bowed gracefully. "You are the Duke of Schleswig, so what about Duke Frederick?" A Danish noble said in astonishment in German with a Danish accent. Marin's eyes flashed with coldness, and he thought to himself, sure enough, these Danes are unreliable. I have already controlled Denmark, and this guy is still thinking about Frederick. Marin quickly took out the document signed by King Hans of Denmark and the document signed by Prince Frederick himself to give up the title of Duke of Schleswig, and let the representatives of these nobles visit. On the side, former Danish Prime Minister Mikkel said to everyone with a smile, "Yes, I witnessed with my own eyes that His Majesty King Hans of Denmark signed this document and granted the title of Duke of Schleswig to Lord Marin." Mikkel is the former Prime Minister of Denmark. Except for those small landlords and nobles who stayed in the countryside, the knowledgeable and high-ranking nobles present all knew who he was. Moreover, they were also very curious about why Mikkel abandoned the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Denmark and came to be the Prime Minister of the Duchy of Schleswig. In fact, Mikkel felt wronged. If he hadn't signed that unfortunate diplomatic document, would he have to run away to save his life? However, even if he did not run away, there was a great danger that he would be treated as a scapegoat by King Hans of Denmark. In this case, he had to leave Denmark and seek refuge with Marin, who was willing to take him in. After collective identification by several important local nobles, it was confirmed that the two documents were written by King Hans of Denmark and Prince Frederick, and the ink was authentic. After confirming his legal identity, Marin began to speak furiously. The content of the speech was mainly to repeatedly emphasize that the Duchy of Schleswig was an integral part of Germany and should not be controlled by the Danes. The Duke of Schleswig should also be held by a German. Hearing Marin's speech, the German nobles in the south of the Duchy of Schleswig applauded, while the Danish nobles in the north had dark faces. However, in this era, although there were many Danes in the northern part of the Duchy of Schleswig, it was not as serious as during the Prussian-Danish War in the 19th century, when the entire northern half was Danish. At present, among the 150,000 people in the Duchy of Schleswig, only 40,000 are Danes. Moreover, half of them gradually migrated from Denmark after the union of Denmark and the Duchy of Schleswig in 1460. Similarly, among the 500 nobles present, only 100 are Danes. The other 400 are Germans. Usually, in the Duchy of Schleswig, the Germans and Danes are also fighting openly and secretly. However, the Danes have the support of the king and are more confident. Although they are fewer in number, they are not at a disadvantage in the fight. Marin's speech clearly supports the German nobles and suppresses the Danish nobles. It would be strange if those Danish nobles were happy. Some Danish nobles even whispered below, intending to secretly trip up Marin. However, they discussed how to trip up Marin, and Marin threw out a killer weapon, the land redemption policy. This policy first took the Danish nobles as the first move, announcing the redemption of all the Danish nobles' land. Why? Why deprive us of our land? Many Danish nobles shouted. For nobles, only those with territory can be considered real nobles. Those with titles but no territory can only be regarded as nobles with face, without substance. To deprive them of their land is simply to take their lives. When did I say to deprive you of your land? I paid for it, understand? Marin replied with a smile. Are we still nobles if we lose our land? A Danish noble asked angrily. That's not my business. You know, the Duchy of Schleswig is the territory of the Holy Roman Empire and the territory of the Germans. As for the Danes, it's okay to come to the Duchy of Schleswig to live, but if you want to be a noble here. Marin paused and then stopped, but obviously, his meaning was no. Yes, this is German territory, what kind of nobles are Danes? It's all the fault of Christian I and his son. At this time, some local German nobles who were originally at odds with the Danish nobles jumped out to support Marin. Marin glanced at him with admiration in his eyes. A man who knows the times is a hero. Well, I think that although the Germans don't recognize your noble status, King Hans should still recognize it. After all, you are Danes. With the money I used to redeem your land, you can buy a new piece of land from King Hans as a fiefdom. At this time, the entire Denmark has an area of about 37,000 square kilometers, excluding the North Schleswig area, and a population of only 600,000. There are a lot of vacant areas. As long as you have money, it is indeed easy to buy territory. Moreover, at this time, because the treasury was robbed, it was the time when King Hans of Denmark was most in need of money. These guys took the money to buy the territory, which was definitely a timely help to King Hans. Although it was very unpleasant that this would benefit Hans more, Marin knew that he could not do it too much. Otherwise, no one would surrender to him when he attacked other countries in the future. Therefore, he could only spend money to redeem the land of these Danish nobles. And allow them to go to Denmark with money to buy territory from King Hans. Marin told the Danish nobles that King Hans's treasury had been emptied by himself and was short of money at this time. If you take the money to buy territory from Hans, the territory you sell may not be smaller than the current one. Those Danish nobles thought about it, so most people agreed to sell the land for money. There were also a few who wanted to oppose, but under the threat of swords and guns from Marin's army, they had to surrender. In this way, Marin cleared out the 100 Danish nobles in the Duchy of Schleswig through a policy of forced redemption. However, Marin did not allow the Danish nobles to take any Danish serfs with them when they left. Because Marin also needs labor. Next, the question is how to deal with the German nobles. Marin plans to conduct an assessment among these 400 German nobles. The outstanding ones will be admitted as local officials, and their family land will also be retained. For the nobles who did not pass the assessment, the family land will be entrusted. The so-called trusteeship means that those lands will nominally belong to the nobles of the entrusted territories in the future. But the actual managers will all be replaced by Marin's people. However, Marin will not infringe on the interests of the nobles of the entrusted territories. In the past, they could collect a certain amount of money and grain every year. In the future, Marin will pay them the same amount of money and grain every year, and never less than them. But in fact, because Marin knows fertilizer technology, the same field, when it falls into Marin's hands, can increase its yield 3 or 4 times. For example, the rye that originally produced more than 100 pounds per mu, at least 400 pounds per mu in Marin's hands. In that way, the extra 200 pounds of harvest will all go into Marin's pocket. But what Marin provides to those landowner nobles is still calculated according to their original harvest. In this way, using the original land and serfs, Marin can get more than 200 pounds of income per mu, which is much more than the landowner. Moreover, due to insufficient population, a large amount of land in the Duchy of Schleswig is still barren. You know, the Duchy of Schleswig has 9,200 square kilometers, but the population is only 150,000, which is about the same as the current East Frisian state. However, East Frisia is only more than 3,000 square kilometers, while the Duchy of Schleswig is 9,200 square kilometers. It can be said that there is a lot of land in the Duchy of Schleswig, but it is a pity that there is a lack of people to develop it. But the population problem is not a problem for Marin. If he wants people, he can directly recruit many poor Germans from the southern region. As long as there is enough food, population is not a problem at all. Besides, the Duchy of Schleswig belongs to the coastal area, with many rivers and lakes, no mountains, and only some hills. Under this terrain, it is very easy to develop wasteland into fertile fields. The premise is that Marin first gets enough immigrants. Just like that, with an order, the assessment of officials in the Duchy of Schleswig began. The person in charge of the assessment was Mikkel. Mikkel has served as the Prime Minister of Denmark for 10 years. Naturally, he is no stranger to assessing his subordinates and is very skilled. Marin was relieved to hand this matter over to him. However, those German nobles who participated in the assessment did not know that this assessment was related to whether they could control their own fiefdoms. Because Marin did not tell them in advance. Chapter 135, The Las Vegas Plan. Soon, the experienced Mikkel used the traditional assessment method to select 180 nobles with qualified political skills to serve as officials at all levels of the Duchy of Schleswig. As for the other 220 unlucky people who were unqualified, Marin announced the trusteeship plan to them. This time, this group of people exploded. Why? If their manners were entrusted, how could they still be the masters in their own territory? However, facing the bright swords and guns of nearly 20,000 troops, they still surrendered. After that, Marin announced the Las Vegas Plan to them. The so-called Las Vegas Plan is that Marin plans to build a Las Vegas city, the name is pirated, to accommodate these 220 nobles and their families. This newly built Las Vegas city will add many jewels projects. For example, the casino will be the first project. Marin plans to introduce the poker, baccarat, jinhua, dedizu and other games in later generations. At the same time, introduce Chinese mahjong and pai gao, as well as traditional dice shaking and other gambling methods to keep these nobles in captivity. Marin didn't believe it. There are so many ways to gamble, and there is always one that they like. As long as this group of nobles fall in love with poker or mahjong and indulge in it all day long, they will not be a threat to him. Moreover, in the new Las Vegas city, Marin plans to build a new racecourse for horse racing and horse betting among nobles. Horse racing is a very exciting game, which can easily stimulate people's adrenaline to increase significantly and make people excited. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that through horse racing and horse betting, these bored nobles can be stimulated to cultivate excellent horse breeds. Whether the horse is good or not, you can only know it by comparing it. As long as you find a good horse, Marin will definitely go to borrow a breed to improve the performance of the war horse. In this way, Marin does not have to spend his own money. With the help of these endless nobles, he can get excellent breeds of war horses. Why not? Moreover, through the popularity of horse racing, Marin can also use this to train many civilian riders. These riders often practice horse racing, and their riding skills will naturally not be low. Then add some horse martial arts, which can be used as cavalry. Once the country needs war, the riders of the racecourse can be recruited to serve as cavalry. Even those racehorses can be taken to the battlefield for a walk. In this way, through horse racing and horse betting, Marin can also achieve the goal of hiding cavalry, soldiers among the people. Although there are not many horses raised at ordinary times, at critical moments, a powerful cavalry can be suddenly pulled out. That's not all. In addition to gambling cards and mahjong, and oak for horse betting, Marin also plans to promote football in Las Vegas. Of course, this is not to promote any formal football there, but to learn from the domestic amateur games, by a small boss or second generation, organize an amateur team to compete with each other. Before the game, bet on each other. However, Marin made some changes to this. He will build a special football field to encourage those nobles to form their own football team. Then, encourage those nobles to fight each other and bet on the win or loss. At the same time, arrange people to be the dealer on the spot to attract audience bets and bet on the win or loss of the two teams. Football is a big project, and it is also very labor-intensive and energy-consuming to really toss it up. As long as they put in the effort, would those nobles still have the heart to think about other things? You know, in later generations, many European fans relied on the country's high welfare, did not think about work, and went to watch football all day. The team went on an expedition abroad, and they followed the team on the expedition. This group of people is of course a good thing for the team. But it may not be a good thing for the country. Because the team went abroad to play international games, such as the European Cup, on Wednesdays and Thursdays. This group of people also followed the expedition, obviously not working. Although Marin also likes football, he is not so bad as to stop doing his job for football. Of course, this is also due to national conditions. In Europe, fans can get high relief funds even if they don't work, so that they can afford to buy tickets, drink beer, and be a football hooligan. Even if they go on an expedition abroad with the team, it is not a big problem. However, in China, it is very difficult to follow the football team on an expedition. Because everyone has to work and support themselves. The league is okay, it's all weekends. Once the AFC Champions League plays away games, it's all Tuesdays and Wednesdays. At this time, those who can still go with the team are either the second generation of rich people or the professional cheerleaders hired by the club to support the scene. However, for Marin now, he will add any project that can attract people to the city of Las Vegas to attract those incompetent nobles and their families. Lest they be energetic and think about making more trouble. Moreover, in addition to the mainstream major projects such as poker, mahjong, horse racing, and football, Marin will also join cockfighting, dog fighting, cricket fighting and other projects to completely ruin the noble children in Las Vegas. Of course, gambling and yellow are inseparable. In Las Vegas, Marin plans to use the Maumei purchased from the Crimean Khanate to build a number of bathing cities, saunas, and other nightlife venues to attract those nobles and let them have beautiful girls to accompany them in the middle of the night. In this way, there will be no time to get together to discuss a rebellion. At that time, at night, those nobles will have a beautiful Maumei in their arms. Will they have time to think about rebellion? I don't have time, let's make a little man first. These means, except for horse racing and football, are more formal, but other projects are all meant to be a hook. As long as these big moves are released, there are very few nobles who can resist. If he can resist, then he must be an excellent noble who can pass the assessment, and he doesn't have to be sent to Las Vegas for fun. The last question is, where should Las Vegas be built? Marin thought for a long time and decided to build it in the earldom of Oldenburg, not far from the earldom of East Frisia. Because it is close to his capital Aurich, it is convenient for monitoring. Once there is an abnormality in Las Vegas, he can quickly send troops to solve it. Moreover, after leaving his hometown, the Duchy of Schleswig, it is difficult for those nobles to make any waves. However, the only thing Marin is worried about is that Las Vegas has so many fun projects, and it is close to the mainland. If his nobles and soldiers are also attracted, they will become gamblers and gourds, and then they will have no intention of doing things. Marin is deeply troubled and thinks this is a big problem. Chapter 136 Diet Martian. Just when Marin was in a dilemma, he suddenly remembered that he had exchanged the southern commercial city of Rendsburg in the Duchy of Schleswig with Hamburg for the Dithmarschen area at the mouth of the Elbe River and the eastern coast of the North Sea, which was the Dithmarschen County in later generations. Dithmarschen County occupied the western estuary of the Duchy of Holstein. Logically, it should be a very important place, and Hamburg would not give it up so easily. However, there was a group of fierce residents in Dithmarschen County who were able to defeat more than 10,000 Danish troops and almost drown the Danish king Hans. Therefore, Hamburg, whose army has never been strong, was a little scared of this place. The people of Hamburg never thought that their army was stronger than the army of the Kingdom of Denmark. In fact, although Marin found out the details of the Battle of Hemmingstad, others might not know it. Marin knew very well that in the Battle of Hemmingstad, Wolf Esprand, the commander of the Dithmarschen resistance, had clearly used the method of breaking the dam to drown the Danish army. Such a strategy has been used many times in ancient China. But it is very new in Europe. Moreover, in this era, because of the strength of the Holy See, Europeans are still very superstitious. When Marin sent people to investigate this matter, someone actually said that it was God's will that prevented Hans from getting control of Dithmarschen. What surprised Marin was that there were still many supporters of this bullshit theory. In fact, this fallacy was a rumor secretly spread by Wolf Esprand. However, this rumor is very popular. Why? Because it was too magical. When Dithmarschen's 1,000 militiamen fought against more than 10,000 Danish troops, a sudden mountain torrent broke out and washed away the Danish army, but the Dithmarschen defenders suffered no losses. If this is not God helping Dithmarschen, then what is it? In order to deter the Danes from invading again, the Dithmarschen people never mentioned that they sent 3,000 militiamen to block the upper reaches of the river and dig up the dam, and attributed all the credit to God, just to scare the Danes. After the Danes failed, they also had to find excuses for themselves. After all, more than 10,000 troops went to attack 1,000 militias, and most of them were killed or injured. There must be a suitable excuse. You can't tell others that King Hans, who led the army, is a pig, right? Therefore, for the Danes, God prevented Denmark from obtaining Dithmarschen, is also a very acceptable statement. At least, King Hans will not lose face. And the reason why Marin was able to quickly judge from the intelligence that the Dithmarschen people defeated Denmark with water attacks was because he had seen too many similar battles in ancient China in his previous life, and he could tell at a glance. Europeans of this era had never seen such battles, and the Dithmarschen people confused the audience and spread rumors, so they were fooled all of a sudden. Therefore, the Hamburg people were very reluctant to be assigned to the Dithmarschen area. They were also afraid that Dithmarschen's divine power protection would bring huge losses to themselves if they attacked forcibly. Therefore, after discussion, the Hamburg parliament simply exchanged the Dithmarschen area with Marin for the important commercial city of Lensburg that had been taken down. Although the area of Rendsburg is much smaller than that of Dithmarschen, the business there is developed. It is the border and cargo distribution center of the Principality of Holstein and the Principality of Schleswig. Therefore, obtaining Rendsburg will largely gain the opportunity to open up the market of the Principality of Schleswig. Moreover, the people of Hamburg started out as businessmen and are not good at farming. Obtaining Rendsburg, which is conducive to the start of war business, is obviously more in line with the appetite of the Hamburg people who are good at business. As for Marin, he was extremely happy to obtain the Dithmarschen county area. Of course, on the surface, he had to pretend to be a "I've lost a lot" expression to the Hamburg people. Although, in the short term, the tax revenue in the Dithmarschen area, which is about the size of a county, may not be as high as that in Rendsburg. However, that is a temporary situation. Marin has always looked at problems from a development perspective, so he doesn't care about the temporary backwardness of the Dithmarschen area. After all, although the Dithmarschen region is backward now, its geographical location is too good. The Dithmarschen region not only has the entire North Sea coastal area of the Principality of Holstein, with an area of up to 1,400 square kilometers, but also occupies the north bank of the Elbe River estuary, which is a key area for water and land transportation. As long as Marlin is willing to invest, build a port here, and build convenient roads, this kind of area with convenient transportation will grow very quickly. In fact, it is not that no one in Hamburg has seen this. However, the leaders of Hamburg City are a group of businessmen. The important feature of businessmen is that they pay more attention to short-term gains. Therefore, even if someone in Hamburg City sees the long-term benefits of the Dithmarschen region, they cannot persuade other Hamburg members who are from businessmen. In fact, it cannot be blamed that the members are short-sighted. It is because the position of member is not hereditary. The members of Hamburg City have paid a great price to get the position of member, and their term of office is only a few years. During this term of office, these members of the parliament must of course work hard to get enough benefits for their family and the Chamber of Commerce, as fast as possible. As for long-term interests, the risk is too great and the wait is too long. Therefore, they would rather choose short-term interests. After all, this is more stable and there is no risk. At the same time, in this era, cities and villages are strictly separated. The city is the territory of merchants and craftsmen, while the countryside is the territory of feudal nobles. Even if Hamburg takes over the Dithmarschen area, there is no interest in farming. Because the people of Hamburg are mainly engaged in business and handicrafts, no one is willing to farm. In addition, the current agricultural output in Europe is so low that farming is not profitable at all. Moreover, it is not popular in Europe to levy agricultural taxes in this era. No matter how large the Dithmarschen area is, it cannot provide stable tax revenue. Under such circumstances, the Hamburg Parliament will naturally choose the commercial city of Lenzburg, which has an important geographical location and can provide tax revenue, and abandon the Dithmarschen area, which has a large area but no stable tax revenue. Marin had been worried that if Las Vegas was built on the mainland, it would corrupt the local nobles, officials and officers. However, if it was placed in the Duchy of Schleswig, he would not be at ease. Because the Duchy of Schleswig is the home of those Schleswig nobles who are to be confined. It is easy to get out of control if it is placed there. After consideration, Marin suddenly found that the Dithmarschen area is a very good area to build Las Vegas city. First of all, the Dithmarschen area is neither in the native area of Marin's rule nor in the newly controlled Duchy of Schleswig. Moreover, the geographical location here is excellent. If the new Las Vegas city is built on the north bank of the Elbe estuary, there is also a huge advantage of convenient transportation. Because Las Vegas city can not only be used to confine the nobles of the Duchy of Schleswig and the Earldom of Oldenburg, so that they can enjoy themselves. At the same time, the city can also be open to the outside world, attracting big businessmen from Hamburg to come and happy. So many entertainment projects, and Maumee. I don't believe that those wealthy Hamburg businessmen are unwilling to spend money. At the same time, not only Hamburg businessmen, but also businessmen from nearby Lübeck and Bremen will be attracted when they hear about such a place. Of course, some nobles nearby are also indispensable. As long as these people come, Marin can let the service staff of the newly built Las Vegas city take out the posture of welcoming God, making these rich people happy, and there is no need to worry about not having repeat customers. At that time, Las Vegas city could not only be used as a place to imprison and corrupt those surrendered nobles who were not trusted, but also used for external business and earning a lot of profits, which could be described as killing two birds with one stone. Thinking of this, Marin immediately made a decision to take over the Dithmarschen area immediately. Then, on the north bank of the Elbe estuary, Brunsbüttel at the mouth of the Kiel Canal in later generations, a new Las Vegas city would be built and made into a famous entertainment center in northern Germany, attracting nearby big businessmen and nobles to spend a lot of money, prospering the local economy, and at the same time, bringing Marin a lot of profits. Chapter 137, Dispatching Troops. If you want to take over the Dithmarschen area, you must face the 1,000 well-trained militias and about 3,000 civilians in the Dithmarschen area. If it is a face-to-face confrontation, the 4,000 militias on the opposite side will definitely not be the opponent of Marin's army. However, Marin is also worried that the other side will use old methods, such as building dams, and then bursting the dams to release water and drown his army. Therefore, before marching into Dithmarschen, Marin asked Sauer to spread out the reconnaissance troops and focus on reconnaissance of rivers and dams in the Dithmarschen area, so as to prevent his army from repeating the mistakes of the Danish army. Then, Marin began to gather the army and prepare to march into Heide, the capital of the Dithmarschen area, striving to advance quickly and surround Heide city in the shortest time. As Sauer's scouts conducted in-depth investigations, Marin unexpectedly discovered that the main ethnic group in the Dithmarschen area was the Frisians. The Frisians are widely distributed in the North Sea region of Germany, from the Friesland province in the Netherlands to the west coast of Denmark. For example, the western coastal areas of the Duchy of Schleswig are mainly inhabited by Frisian fishermen. Unexpectedly, the Dithmarschen area in the south is also dominated by Frisians. In fact, in this era, not only the coastal areas of West Frisia and East Frisia are dominated by Frisians. The North Sea coast of the county of Oldenburg, the Archbishopric of Bremen, the Duchy of Holstein and the Duchy of Schleswig are all dominated by Frisians. Even the Anglo-Saxons who migrated to Britain at that time were mixed with a large number of Frisians. Or, it can be said that the later Frisians were the group of people left behind by the Anglo-Saxons who migrated to Britain. Therefore, English and Frisian were so similar in the Middle Ages. In fact, the two can communicate with each other completely. However, the writing methods of the two are completely different. Frisian is written in German, while English is written in English. The difference between the two is somewhat similar to the writing of Inner and Outer Mongolia. Inner Mongolia still uses traditional Mongolian writing, while Outer Mongolia, due to the colonization of Mauzi, uses a very funny Cyrillic alphabet. However, people in Inner and Outer Mongolia can communicate directly with each other verbally, but they cannot communicate with each other in writing. Marin has always claimed to be the leader of the Frisians, and most of these Frisians are familiar with water and good at fishing, and are a very good source of sailors. According to intelligence, there are more than 20,000 people in the Dithmarschen area, most of whom are Frisians. Therefore, Marin is going to take Dithmarschen anyway. Not to mention its excellent geographical location, the 20,000 Frisians alone are enough to make Marin excited. In fact, another intelligence shows that before, the reason why the Dithmarschen area was able to resist Denmark and not be annexed was that Lübeck's support for it was very important. Whenever the Danish army gathered and wanted to attack Dithmarschen, the Lübeck people would get intelligence from Copenhagen early and then quickly send it to the Dithmarschen area. When the Danish army arrived, the Frisians in the Dithmarschen area had already been ready for battle. The Battle of Hemmingstedt that broke out before was a plan made by the commander Wolf Esprand to flood the Danish army after the Dithmarschen people received intelligence about the Danish army's attack. For this reason, the Dithmarschen army took the initiative to abandon the capital Heide and retreated to the village of Hemmingstedt, which was located on higher ground. Then, they attracted the siege of the Danish army, and then opened the floodgates to flood the Danish army. However, now Lübeck is Marin's ally, so naturally he will no longer control Dithmarschen's own combat intentions. Moreover, Marin's 20,000 troops are now retreating and have not disbanded. At this time, there is no need to spend time mobilizing to attack Dithmarschen, and they can move in directly. After Sauer's reconnaissance troops found out the situation in the Dithmarschen area, Marin did not bother to appease the disfavored nobles who were about to be arranged to the yet-to-existent city of Las Vegas. After leaving 5,000 troops to guard the Duchy of Schleswig, he led 15,000 troops and headed directly to the Dithmarschen area according to the road scouted by Sauer's scouts. First, Marin led the army across the pontoon bridge prepared by the scouts and crossed the Ida River, the natural dividing line between the Duchy of Holstein and the Duchy of Schleswig. Then, the army marched southward and headed straight for Heide, the capital of the Dithmarschen area. In order to prevent the enemy from repeating the same trick, Marin sent 1,000 lancers first, cutting off the road from Heide to the village of Hemmingstedt in the south, and patrolling the nearby rivers to prevent the enemy from doing anything else like flooding the seven armies. The 14,000 main troops, with a lot of artillery, shells and food supplies, rushed slowly towards the city of Heide. In Heide, the capital of Dithmarschen, an officer hurriedly rode into the city and ran towards the city hall. Then, despite being sweating all over, he rushed directly into the office of the governor, Wolf Esprand. Report, Governor, the army of the East Frisian state, about 10,000 people, invaded Dithmarschen. What? More than 10,000 people? Why was there no news in advance? The governor of the Dithmarschen Peasant Republic, Wolf Esprand, was also a little panicked. Usually, before Dithmarschen was attacked, there would be people from Lübeck to warn. But this time, the people from Lübeck did not come to warn. Without any preparation, the enemy suddenly came with more than 10,000 troops, which made Wolf Esprand, who was known as resourceful, a little panicked. It's not clear. It is said that the county of East Frisia has formed an alliance with Hamburg and Lübeck. The people of Lübeck are now allies of East Frisia, so they didn't warn us. Never mind, go and call General Anriel over and ask him to issue a mobilization order to recruit all the men in the country to assist in the defense. Then, find an opportunity to retreat to the village of Hemmingstedt. Wolf Esprand planned to repeat the old trick and drown the enemy with a flood. I'm afraid it won't work, Lord Governor. When I came, the enemy sent out 1,000 cavalrymen, each with 2 horses, and controlled the main road outside the city of Heide. Moreover, according to my observation, those cavalrymen were not ordinary light cavalrymen, but heavy armored knights wearing armor and with high martial arts skills. If our army left the city, the 1,000 cavalrymen alone could easily destroy us. Before, I could only rush into the city from the west. The east and south of the city are now controlled by the 1,000 enemy cavalrymen. The officer said dejectedly. Wolf Esprand was also depressed when he heard this very bad news. However, he made a decision quickly. Never mind, since flooding is impossible, then please go to the towns and villages west of Heide and ask them to send more militia to help defend Heide. By the way, let them come on horseback and don't delay on the way. Once the main force of the enemy arrives, we won't even have the possibility to recruit reinforcements. If we can't win. No ifs. Even if we can't win, we have to fight. Of course, if it really doesn't work, we can also negotiate with the enemy. But first, we must fight a good battle. That way, even if we negotiate, we can take the initiative. Understood. The officer left quickly to carry out the order. And Wolf Esprand, with a sad face, sat at the table, thinking about countermeasures. Wolf Esprand was also familiar with Marin. When Denmark helped the earldom of Oldenburg to force Marin to cede land and pay compensation, Wolf Esprand even thought about forming an alliance with Marin. Because he had long heard that Marin was a military genius with strong ability to train and command troops. It is said that he also invented the powerful Marin phalanx. But what he didn't expect was that in a blink of an eye, Marin not only avenged Denmark, but also went straight to Copenhagen. Obviously, the combat effectiveness of Marin's army was unbelievably high. At least, the Danish army was beaten to tears. Originally, Wolf Esprand was very happy that Denmark was in trouble. However, before he could be happy for long, the East Frisian army turned around to deal with Dithmarschen, which caught Wolf Esprand off guard. What made Wolf Esprand even more helpless was that the other side seemed to be on guard against his old tricks, using flooding, and had already sent cavalry to block the road to the upper reaches of the eastern river, making Wolf Esprand's flooding strategies useless. Speaking of which, Wolf Esprand can be regarded as the Zhuge Kongming of Europe. Being able to use 1,000 militiamen to defeat more than 10,000 Danish troops is definitely enough to go down in history. Unfortunately, without the ingenious plan of flooding, 1,000 militiamen faced more than 10,000 East Frisian troops that had just defeated Denmark. Even the resourceful Wolf Esprand was somewhat helpless. After all, the difference in strength was too great. Apart from anything else, if there were no protection from the city walls, the 1,000 lancers in the east and south of the city alone would be able to defeat the 1,000 militiamen in Hyde City 100 times over. Not to mention the main force of more than 10,000 troops. Chapter 138, Encirclement and Persuasion. Because they were carrying a large number of artillery, shells, food and various materials looted from Denmark, the army's marching speed was very slow. But Marin was not in a hurry at all, because even if Dithmarschen was given more time, the other side could not turn out enough troops. Even though the Lancers kept sending people to report that the Dithmarschen people had mobilized hundreds of civilians from the west of Hyde City into the city, it did not cause any ripples in Marin's heart. Because even if all the civilians in the Dithmarschen area were gathered together, there were only 4,000 or 5,000 people, and they were still not the opponents of Marin's army. Along the way, the morale of the army was not high, and there was no excitement and uneasiness when they attacked Denmark. Because, in everyone's opinion, stuff like Dithmarschen is really not worth mentioning. And, most importantly, the wives they robbed in Denmark did not follow the army. I thought that after arriving in the Duchy of Schleswig, Marin would hold a collective wedding for them. Then, the soldiers can live a shameless and happy sex life with the Danish girls they robbed. Unexpectedly, Marin did not fulfill his promise immediately, but brought them to Dithmarschen. Marin also saw that the soldiers were in a bad mood, but he had no choice. After all, he couldn't let the soldiers go to war with women, right? So, he could only let the priests accompanying the army preach and brainwash the soldiers during their rest every day. Now, Marin only has 30 full-time brainwashing priests trained by the flatterer auxiliary Bishop Taylor. All these priests were brought out during this march. In Marin's 15,000 troops, there is an average of one priest for every 500 people. Although it is not as good as the level of one instructor for each company in our army in later generations, the difference is not very big. Fortunately, auxiliary Bishop Taylor has now trained about 80 priests. However, these people were assigned by Marin to various churches in cities and villages. In addition, several were sent to the colonies. When he returns to East Frisia this time, Marin plans to ask Taylor to send dozens of apprentices to the Principality of Schleswig and the Earldom of Oldenburg to take over the work of local missionaries, responsible for propaganda and brainwashing the local people, to prevent the locals from being dissatisfied with Marin and resisting. In the past, these military priests had a great influence on the soldiers. As long as they preached for a while, the soldiers would mostly be able to calm down. However, this time the teachers failed. Because these young men were taken away by their wives who were within their reach. Now they only want to end the war quickly, and then go back and hug their wives. It seems that it is not enough to rely on military priests alone. We have to get some art troops, sing songs, dance, and appease these big-headed soldiers. Marin thought of the art troops in later generations. Before television became popular, in our army's barracks, the soldiers could only rely on listening to the radio, or from time to time a group of beautiful girls from the art troupe performed for them to comfort the lonely hearts of the soldiers. Although those girls in the art troupe who look like fairies do not have the share of those ordinary food soldiers, letting them take a look from time to time can also comfort their lonely hearts. People, when they have thoughts, they have motivation. With motivation, they will strive to make progress. Otherwise, a team that eats and waits for death will definitely be beaten. In the loneliness and unrest along the way, the army finally arrived at the foot of Hyde City and completed the siege of Hyde City. At this time, there were only 1,000 well-trained main militias and 1,200 civilians recruited from all over the country in Hyde City. It stands to reason that after the army arrived, it should immediately arrange for the siege. However, after Marin arrived with the army, he did not immediately order the siege, but selected Frisian soldiers from the East Frisian state from the army, holding earth trumpets, and began to shout to the city in Frisian, persuading the Dithmarschen people in Hyde city to surrender and avoid conflict and bloodshed. Why is it so? Because Marin was attracted to Wolf Esperand. Of course, Marin was not attracted to the body of Wolf Esperand, a middle-aged man in his 40s, but to his ability and wisdom. Wolf Esperand was definitely a genius in European military affairs, as he could use the strategy of flooding 7 armies in the rigid and dogmatic late Middle Ages in Europe. You know, Europe now has not yet come into contact with the Orientals, so naturally it doesn't know about the art of war and 36 strategies. Wolf Esperand was able to come up with the strategy of flooding the Danish army entirely by his own wisdom. Moreover, this person is not rigid and dogmatic. Marin trained Schwartz for a long time and found a problem, that is, although Schwartz is smart and loves to learn. However, probably because he was born in a knight family, there are always some dogmas and principles in his mind. When fighting, Schwartz has no problem confronting others head-on. However, it is difficult to learn to achieve the greatest victory at the lowest cost. This is entirely due to the influence of the dogmatic thinking of the knights, which is difficult to change. Wolf Esperand is different. He comes from a civilian family and started as an ordinary militia captain. He does not have the dogmatic ideas of the nobles. He is flexible in thinking and is a pragmatist like Marin. As long as it is beneficial to him, mountains and rivers can become his help in fighting the enemy. Therefore, Marin admires Wolf Esperand very much. Although the other party is in his 40s, in Marin's view, his talent is better than Schwartz. If he teaches him for a while, he will definitely be able to train a famous general. Therefore, after besieging the city of Hyde, Marin did not order an attack, but sent soldiers of Frisian origin to keep shouting into the city to persuade the Dithmarschen people to surrender. If Wolf Esperand is willing to surrender, Marin does not mind giving him a senior official position. Marin even plans to make Wolf Esperand the garrison general of the Duchy of Schleswig in the future, responsible for guarding against the Danish attack. After all, the Danes will definitely not be reconciled after losing the Duchy of Schleswig and the Duchy of Holstein. The Duchy of Holstein is in the south, and the Danes are difficult to contact. They need to conquer the Duchy of Schleswig first before they can reach the south. Therefore, in the future, the Duchy of Schleswig is doomed to be unpeaceful. Marin also needs a powerful general to guard the local area and resist the Danish counterattack. But now, Marin is extremely short of generals. Although Schwartz, Stade and others are capable of completing the task of guarding the Duchy of Schleswig. However, they have other tasks. For example, in the future, Marin will also plot West Frisia and need them. Therefore, Marin is very short of senior officers. And those wandering knights from knight families can only serve as middle and lower level officials. There are not many people in Marin who are capable of commanding thousands of troops. It is precisely because of this that after seeing such a talented military commander as Wolf Esperand, Marin suddenly moved his love for talent and planned to recruit peacefully. Therefore, he ordered the army to only surround Hyde city without attacking it, hoping to persuade a military genius like Wolf Esperand to surrender and help him expand his territory or defend a place. Chapter 139, Being Captured. Dear residents of Dithmarschen, you have been surrounded by the powerful East Frisian army. There is nowhere to escape. I hope you can know the times, join the great God-favored Marin, and enjoy a beautiful and happy life. Fighting when you know you can't win is not a smart choice. Since you can't win, you might as well lie down and enjoy, cough cough, surrender. Lord Marin has half Frisian blood and is a descendant of the Block family. You are all Frisians, you should surrender to the Frisian princess, Lord Marin. Life is precious, but wealth is more valuable. If you are willing to surrender, you can choose the official position. Under the city of Hyde, a group of East Frisian soldiers of Frisian origin, holding earthen trumpets, shouted hard into the city of Hyde. On the top of the city, Wolf Esperand, who was commanding the army to defend the city, heard the shouts of the East Frisian soldiers under the city, and his head was full of black lines. What kind of mess is this? If shouting can win a battle, I will definitely hire people who shout to replace the army in the future. Even if I have to surrender, I will win a battle first, so as not to be underestimated, and to increase my bargaining chips. Wolf Esperand made up his mind. However, since the other party did not kill him, he did not want to offend him completely. So, for those East Frisian soldiers who shouted with earthen trumpets under the city wall, Wolf Esperand ordered his archers to shoot arrows with the arrowheads removed to scare those who shouted. At first, the East Frisian soldiers who shouted were scared. However, after finding that the arrows shot at them were arrowless, they became bolder, went back to apply for iron helmets for smashing, and continued to shout as if nothing had happened. Then Wolf Esperin got angry and asked his men to stop using arrows without arrows, but only grind the arrowheads flat, or metal arrowheads. Although such arrows had poor penetration, they still injured several East Frisian soldiers who shouted. When Marin saw that some of his men were injured, he was a little angry because the other party was so disrespectful. So, more than a dozen short-barreled 18-pound Karen cannons were pushed out. Boom 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 dash, a large number of iron ball shells hit the gate of Hyde City, making loud noises. Hyde City is not Copenhagen. There are no cast iron gates, but oak. Therefore, the soldiers defending the city were frightened by the huge impact of the iron ball shells. Wolf Esperin knew that this could not go on. It is said that this army used artillery to knock open the gates of many cities, and it took an average of 2 or 3 days to break through a city. Then, coupled with the method of exploding gunpowder barrels, it is almost certain that the city gate will be damaged. So, Wolf Esperin began to think of another way. Soon, Wolf Esperin found a loud-voiced soldier and began to shout at the soldiers of the East Frisian state who were shouting at the city, asking for negotiations. What? The other side asked for negotiations. Marin was very happy when he heard the news. Yes, the leader of the other side, Wolf Esperin, asked to talk directly with you, sir, to talk about his personal treatment. Gee, Marin was stunned. Damn, should he be so direct? Forget it, after all, Europeans are not as subtle as Chinese people, and even asking for an official position is so straightforward. But I like it. For talented people, Marin has never been stingy with wealth and honor. I'm not afraid that he wants wealth and honor, I'm afraid that he doesn't want it. So, Marin came to the city gate with enthusiasm and expectation, waiting for a separate negotiation with Wolf Esperin. Originally, Khan was going to protect Marin's safety closely. However, in order to show his sincerity, Marin didn't let him. Because, Marin felt that since he was recruiting the other party, he should show enough sincerity and trust. After Marin ordered the army to retreat 1 kilometer as agreed, the gate of Hyde City slowly opened. Marin saw 2 people on horseback coming out of the city gate. A middle-aged man dressed in bright clothes, who seemed to be Wolf Esperin, and the other was a strong young man dressed as a servant, probably an attendant. Both of them followed the agreement and did not carry any weapons or wear armor. The middle-aged man who seemed to be Wolf Esperin took a look and found that Marin did not bring any attendants. He was stunned for a moment, and then a look of joy appeared on his face. He rode his horse straight to Marin with his attendants. Marin was also full of joy, and he couldn't help but tremble all over, with a look of holding back urine on his face. He planned to emit a domineering aura first to intimidate the newcomers, so that the other party would be attracted by his heroic appearance and then bow down. Unexpectedly, when the 2 people on the opposite side approached, the middle-aged man did not bow down, but said to the strong young man in servant clothes next to him in Frisian, "Cage, knock him out quickly, take him back, hurry up." Then, the strong young man in servant's clothes who had been keeping his head down suddenly raised his head, and his sharp eyes like a venomous snake stared at Marin who was still emitting kingly aura and waiting for the other party to bow down. Marin was frightened by the other party's eyes and withdrew his momentum. By the time he realized something was wrong, it was too late. The young man opposite had already rushed over on horseback. At the moment of passing by Marin, he pulled Marin off the warrior Karl at an extremely fast speed, and then chopped Marin's neck with a precise hand knife. What happened to the promise of bow down and worship? Could it be that the water margin is all a lie? This was Marin's last thought before he fell into a coma. When Khan and others who were a few hundred meters away reacted and wanted to chase him, Wolf Esperin had already led his subordinate named Cage, carrying the unconscious Marin, turned their horses around and fled into the city, and quickly closed the city gate. Chapter 140, Self-Inflation. In the room in the backyard of the Hyde City Lord's mansion, Marin was lying on the bed, with a look of despair on his face. Of course, Marin had never worried about his own safety. Although Wolf Esperin had kidnapped him, he would never dare to kill him. Because at this moment, Hyde City was still surrounded by Marin's 15,000 troops. If something happened to him, Hyde City would have to be massacred. Marin said so, and Wolf Esperin certainly believed it and did not dare to abuse him. However, this time, Marin's face was thrown on Mars. Fighting geese all day, but being pecked in the eyes by geese is exactly what Marin is thinking at the moment. Since crossing, Marin has always used his knowledge beyond his time and the fact that Europeans were not good at conspiracy at this time to play these ancient Europeans around. Therefore, Marin later expanded himself step by step. Especially, after Marin conquered Denmark, one of the European powers, his self-confidence swelled to the extreme, and he seemed to think that he was invincible. It was because of this that Marin made the blind decision to meet Wolf Esperand alone, and he also tried to intimidate Wolf Esperand with his kingly aura. Now thinking about it, how ridiculous I was at that time. Maybe it was because the road before was too smooth. Marin regarded himself as a son of the plains, like Duanyu, and felt that he was the embodiment of luck, who could turn disaster into blessing, and even pick up the secret manual of magic skills if he fell off a cliff. Under the influence of such extremely self-inflated thoughts, Marin made the decision to meet Wolf Esperand alone at the foot of the city, and did not care that the other party brought one more person. Then, needless to say, Marin was knocked unconscious and taken away. It turns out that I'm not the son of the plains. Marin thought with a depressed face. Come to think of it, the experiences of those sons of the plains are too ridiculous. The most classic one is that Duanyu fell off a cliff and picked up the secret book of magic skills, and lying there, Mangu Juha crawled into his mouth by himself, and then the protagonist became immune to all poisons. There are also protagonists who just picked up a ring on the ground and got a system, or an old grandfather, and bought a pirated CD to get a system. But, that was a novel about the invincibility of the system after all. Although Marin had a smooth journey, he never won with the help of magic skills or the system. He was able to succeed, relying more on the massive amount of history books he had read in his previous life. Although there was no system, he could also predict the enemy's moves and take countermeasures in advance through the history he had read in his previous life. However, this kind of success is based on the premise of correct judgment. If the judgment is wrong, it will be the same bad luck, and there will be no chance for the system to help release the big move. Look, Marin's momentary self-expansion was used by his opponent, and then he was knocked unconscious and taken away, becoming a prisoner. Of course, Marin is not a fool. In fact, Marin had a plan for dealing with emergencies before. For example, what should he do if the other party brought a macho man? The plan is that Marin hid a clockwork pistol in his clothes. If he encounters a wrong situation, Marin can just pull out the clockwork pistol and shoot the other party's followers. As for Wolf Esperand himself, many people know that he is not a martial arts expert. Marin believes that as long as he has no helpers, and when everyone is unarmed, he will definitely be able to defeat the other party. It was because of this seemingly problem-free plan that Khan agreed not to follow Marin, but to stay in the main force. Because ordinary people really can't resist the sudden attack of Marin's clockwork pistol. Even as strong as Khan is, he dare not say that he can completely avoid Marin's gun shooting. However, what Marin didn't expect was that the young man named Cage, brought by Wolf Esperand, was a horse expert who could pull his opponent off the horse and knock him out quickly during the high-speed charge of the horse. Before he was captured, Marin had actually planned to draw his gun and shoot. Unfortunately, Cage's hand speed was faster, and at the moment when Marin was about to pull out the spring flint gun, he pulled Marin off the horse's back. Marin suddenly lost his center of gravity and couldn't help dancing to keep his balance. In this way, he missed the opportunity to pull out the spring flint gun and was knocked out by Cage. If it was another person with slower hand speed, maybe Marin would have successfully pulled out the spring flint gun and knocked the opponent off the horse. However, there is no if in life. Marin was careless for a while, and the opponent's speed was indeed too fast, so he could only accept the fate of being captured. Moreover, he should also be grateful that it was only the Dithmarschen people who captured him, not the Danish king Hans. If it fell into Hans' hands, Marin would be skinned in a minute. Wolf Esperand did not embarrass Marin. He arranged Marin in a guest room in the backyard of the city lord's mansion and provided him with good food and drink. However, he hoped that Marin would change his mind, give up his covetousness for the Dithmarschen area, leave with the army, and make a written promise not to covet this place in the future. However, Marin himself was still in a stage of severe mental blow. He ignored Wolf Esperand at all, just lying on the bed in a daze and blaming himself. Wolf Esperand did not force it. Anyway, since Marin was captured, the 15,000 troops of East Frisia immediately stopped all attacks, just surrounded Hyde City, and did not dare to make any excessive moves. In this case, even if Marin did not cooperate for a while, Wolf Esperand was not worried. Anyway, if the other party wants to leave, he must cooperate with himself, right? At the door of the room where Marin was, the young man named Cage was moving a stool and sitting at the door to prevent Marin from escaping. After all, Marin was also a knight. Although his martial arts were not top-notch, ordinary soldiers were definitely no match for him. If Marin ran away, then the 15,000 troops outside the city would have nothing to worry about. So, Wolf Esperand simply sent his top general to look after Marin.